When building a presentation, regardless of your audience, you have one primary goal. Make it as easy as possible for your audience to understand what you're trying to tell them. This can be especially challenging in the corporate world, where presentations are often packed with complex data and information that's tough to communicate clearly. So, in today's video, I'll walk you through how top consulting firms like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG structure their slide decks to be both insightful and persuasive for stakeholders and clients. Now, at the heart of every effective deck is the storyline. A really good storyline will persuade the reader to act. A really bad storyline will fall flat. As you might imagine, top consulting firms have mastered the art of clear, compelling storytelling by relying on two powerful frameworks: the SCQA or SCR framework and the pyramid principle. In simple terms, SCQA is your storyline blueprint, the narrative structure that makes any story compelling. For example, imagine you're at home and notice the fridge is almost empty. This is your starting point, the situation. Then you remember you're having friends over for dinner tonight and there's nothing to cook. This creates a complication, the problem that changes the situation and naturally leads to a question. What do I need to do to make sure we have food for dinner? Finally, you develop solutions to answer the question. I need to go to the grocery store and buy ingredients for my favorite pasta recipe, or I need to order takeout. This simple analogy shows how the SCQA framework mirrors the natural way our brains think and plan. Now let's consider a presentation example. Suppose you're on a consulting case for Nike and executives have presented a major business problem. The company has experienced flat sales in its core running shoe division for the past 2 years, despite overall market growth. This is the situation, the current state of affairs. The complication is why the presentation is needed. It could be that a primary competitor, Adidas, is rapidly growing its market share, particularly among the Gen Z demographic. This complication naturally leads to the implicit question: how can Nike reverse this trend and recapture its position as market leader in running footwear? Finally, the main part of your presentation answers the question. Nike should launch a new performance-focused shoe line designed to appeal directly to the Gen Z demographic. Notice how this brings your presentation to life. It puts the presentation in context and tells the audience why they should care. Instead of dropping them in the middle of your data, you are leading them through a compelling narrative. Remember, your goal is to make it as easy as possible for your audience to understand what you're trying to tell them. Top consulting firms in particular do this pretty well. Let's take a look at an example from BCG. So, this presentation tells a clear story about how Asia Pacific is a highly attractive region for renewables investments. The first 3 slides set the stage by highlighting the scale of the opportunity, projected capacity growth, doubling shares of renewables across most markets by 2030, and the fact that a wide range of players can participate. The next 2 slides introduce the complication, the market's complexity. As you can see on this slide, while solar and wind are the main drivers, other opportunities exist, implying a need for careful selection. Following that, key factors such as quality of play and investability must also be considered when deciding where to compete. This complication naturally leads to the key question: how should companies navigate this complex yet attractive market to maximize returns? And as you can see from the remaining slides, it answers the question by laying out a systematic approach, showing how to identify opportunities, assess strategic entry points across the project lifecycle, and weigh the risks against the returns. Top consulting firms use this structured approach because it ensures clarity. In fact, even if you read only the action titles in sequence, they still tell the full story. Alright, that brings us to the second concept, the pyramid principle. Put simply, it's a way of communicating information where you lead with the answer, the main conclusion, support it with a few key arguments, and finally build credibility with supporting data. Going back to our Nike example and leading with the answer, the main conclusion is to regain market share, Nike must launch a new performance shoe line targeting the Gen Z market. 3 supporting reasons for that answer could be that Gen Z prioritizes sustainability and unique designs. A key competitor, Adidas, has successfully grown market share with a similar strategy, and internal data shows the current running shoe design isn't resonating with this demographic. Each of these arguments can then be expanded with additional layers of supporting evidence. Notice how the communication is top-down as opposed to the bottom-up approach, the natural way we process information. This is because in presentations, time is essential. Busy executives want the recommendation first. Often, they may already agree with your conclusion, so this approach lets them quickly align and move on without needing a lengthy justification. Additionally, leading with the answer and then providing supporting facts keep your audience engaged from the start. Now that we've covered the SCQA framework and the pyramid principle, let's move on to how you can write storylines using the dot-dash structure. Before we begin, the biggest mistake people make after finishing the analysis is jumping straight into PowerPoint and start building slides. But instead of doing that, you should use a word processor like Microsoft Word. Why? Because it's much easier to read and refine a storyline when it's on a single page in Word rather than spread across multiple slides in PowerPoint. Plus, storyline is an iterative process. You'll be getting reviews and feedback from your manager and teammates, and Word makes that back and forth far smoother. Alright, once we're in Word, the dot-dash structure is pretty straightforward. Each dot represents a slide's action title and should be a complete sentence that makes a specific point. Under each bullet point, you will have dashes that provide supporting data for the dot above it. This is your evidence and will eventually become the body of your slide. What we've built here is essentially a draft storyline, one that will be reviewed, refined, and iterated until the full narrative representation is solid. Remember, all adjustments should be made in Word to avoid wasting time rebuilding slides in PowerPoint. Once the storyline is finalized, then you move to PowerPoint and build your slide skeleton. At this point, the storyline is locked, the action titles are written, and all that's left to do is to develop the slide bodies. This is where you apply vertical logic, ensuring every element on the slide reinforces the main message. To help you with that, here are detailed videos to guide you on building slides like a top consultant. And if you are looking for a library of over 600 best practice templates used by top strategy consultants, check out the Analyst PPT Toolkit. Links in the video description. If you found this video helpful, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.